Hey gang, Dr. CJ here, and welcome to this somewhat interactive video that will hopefully help you get digging into your topic for this natural sciences essay. Here, I'll show you one of my favorite brainstorming activities, bubble mapping. It would be most useful for you to have already chosen your topic for the essay and gotten feedback from me, so be sure you do that. And then also, as you watch the video, I would have a sheet of paper with you to kind of follow along because, like I said, it's a little interactive. Once you've got that all set and ready, come back and then we can dive in. All right, so what we're going to do, we are going to simulate this idea of a bubble map. Now, a bubble map is going to be, for most of you guys, you're probably doing this on a physical sheet of paper, so it's going to be a little more organic. I'm going to try and mimic this on a computer, so it might be a little clunky, so just stay with me. But we are going to use this kind of process called bubble mapping because it lets you see all of your ideas kind of on the paper. And you're going to start with kind of big bubbles for big ideas. And as you move kind of down the ladder, it's going to be smaller bubbles for smaller ideas or more specific aspects of the idea. And what this does, not only does it let you kind of just dump like a toy box onto the ground, like all of your ideas onto the page, but it also is going to show you how these ideas are connected to each other. And it's going to show you where you might have overlap, in which case that might help you either focus in on one aspect of your topic, or it may help you eliminate something if you maybe don't need to spend specific time on it. All right, so what you're going to do on your sheet of paper, you're going to draw a big circle in the middle. So I'm going to do this here with this guy and reset this so that it's empty. So I've got my big circle in the middle. And then what we're going to do from there, we're going to make three kind of medium-sized circles. One there, put one over here, and I'll put one over here. And then I'm going to make two more for each of these smaller ones. So a little guy here. Bring him there, 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 and there. And then we're going to try and get this draw to work. I am going to connect them. And now it looks like we kind of made like this molecule, which is kind of fun. A little happy molecule. All right, now we're going to actually put some stuff in this, put some content here. So we are going to, in this big centerpiece, we are going to get our major topic then. So let's see. Nope, not that. I have to do it with word art. So your topic is going to go here. So for me, we're going to use, as an example, we're going to do lionfish as my example. So I've got my big idea here. And then what we're going to do in each of these smaller ones, we're going to say who or what is affected. Shrink this size down some. So we want to consider who or what is affected by this problem. Now, so if, again, you want to kind of consider from your article what the actual problem is, as opposed to maybe your article might be talking about a solution. But we want to kind of bring that who or what is affected. Because what this is going to do is it's going to give us a very nice target when we start thinking about our audience, like who we're trying to solve this problem for. Because if you're just trying to solve it for everybody, if your target audience is everyone, that's going to be too big. So that's not going to be useful. So we need to kind of break that down into pieces. So for lionfish, if you don't know, these are an invasive species. We'll add that here. And so any kind of invasive species is going to be working on either eliminating some other aspect of the food chain. We are considering how it's affecting ecosystem balance, things like that. So that's the kind of stuff that we're going to look into here in these medium bubbles. So for lionfish, I'm going to go ahead and add local fish there. And then over here, let's see, who's another specific target audience? Let's say like ecosystem balance. And then this guy up here, let's consider, so we've got fish, we've got the ecosystem. Let's do like commercial fishermen. So these are people who are actually like fishing for a job. They are creating or like gathering the fish that we then turn into meat and products for actual like human consumption. All right, so here we have three major like target audiences. So these are like three targets that are affected by lionfish or these invasive species. Now in these smaller bubbles, we want to try and consider how. We want to think about how they are affected by these this larger problem. So like how are local fish affected by lionfish? How is the ecosystem balance affected by lionfish? And how commercial fishermen are affected by lionfish. And we're going to try and find two for each one. That doesn't always pan out, but it gives you a good idea. All right, so let's just start with one branch. Lionfish is an invasive species that is causing problems for local fish. How is it causing problems for local fish? They're eating too much. Shrink our size a little bit. Not that it super matters, but just for my own OCD. They're eating too much. They are taking away population for these local fish, and that's kind of throwing off the the food chain. Let's go ahead and add food chain here. Oops. Change this other one. Okay, so if our lionfish is our problem, they are causing a problem for local fish because they're eating too many of them, and that is disrupting the food chain. Solid cause and effect, like boing, 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 all the way down kind of the lane. Now let's look over here at the ecosystem balance. So if lionfish are an invasive species, they're causing a problem for the ecosystem balance. How is that a problem? They are disrupting, but maybe not disrupting. They are clearing out prey animals. So what that does is, if they're eating too many of these prey animals, that means that there's not enough for other predators, or that the things that our prey animals actually like take care of, for instance, like if they're herbivores or they eat like plankton or something like that, they are not there doing their job. And so suddenly there's too much of this one thing or not enough of this other, and that kind of throws this out of balance. Specifically, a good example of this would be coral reef health. So lionfish pop up in typically like tropical areas, think like the Bahamas, and they are eating certain animals that help clean or protect or live in coral reefs. And so if these animals disappear, then our coral reef is no longer healthy. It begins to die off, which then kind of creates this domino effect, right? So that's kind of like the bounce that we are looking at, seeing like how one thing sort of leads to another. All right, so let's go over to commercial fishermen. So commercial fishermen, again, are the ones who are fishing for these animals, these fish, to produce product for human consumption. So if lionfish are affecting local fishermen because they are eating the product, if lionfish are eating too much of fish like tuna, for example, or like parrotfish, those are things that we eat, or those are like staples in the fishing industry in terms of product to send out to consumers. So if that's a problem, if lionfish are eating these things, then the commercial fishermen no longer have product. So, that's our kind of like point. Now, really, as far as like commercial fishermen goes, I can't really think of another major example of where that could go. So I think we might only have one here. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of like delete one of our arms. And so that leaves us with this kind of spread of what we have. Now, from here, we want to try and consider where some things are connected. So see if there's any like overlap. So for example, over here on our local fish arc, we've got the local fish and the food chain. This very much connects over here to this idea of ecosystem balance. So that could be a big deal because they're clearing out prey animals. So we may end up like finding that this leads to this. So instead of local fish being like one arm all on itself, we can start with ecosystem balance and then goes to local fish, or vice versa. But we also see up here this commercial fishermen, like they're eating too much product, and the lionfish are doing the same for like these local fish. It's like we see a connection over here as well. Now, ultimately, we need to decide what arm of this argument seems to be the most useful. Now, we don't have to do this right now. The cool thing about bubble mapping is it kind of gives you like a carbon copy or like a save point of your ideas. As you start to do research, you will very likely find that one of these arms that you found is going to be something that the research tend to focus on most. I happen to have done some research on lionfish, and I end up noting that the coral reef is one of the biggest problems here, which also then connects to like tourism. Why did I think that I could write that? So we're going to ignore that aspect. But so it connects to tourism that then kind of have other sort of fallouts, but ultimately that's going to be a social issue. But so coral reef is a nice place to start. Now, the biggest thing to recall too is that this is mostly going to be your paragraph 2, your dangers of the problem. So like we've got a ton of information here in this little bubble map, but basically we only have the second paragraph to talk about it. So there's no way that we're going to be able to talk about all 3 of these arms. So ultimately you need to choose one or combo 2 of them. And I think like this idea of like local fish or ecosystem balance seems to be the most useful. Now, from here, you want to kind of keep an eye on your research, like what aspects ultimately end up helping, or what ultimately get like research attention or possible solutions that are out there. So, for example, for fishermen, I happen to know that they do contests. So like one of the things that I found in my research is that there are contests that are helping to hunt down the fish, remove them from the ecosystem, and scientists are also going around collecting them and either transporting them or getting them into aquariums, things like that. So we see that a solution is kind of hanging out on this arm as well. And so that may give you the idea like, okay, well, maybe I'll hang out over here instead of this other thing, or find a way to connect local fishermen with ecosystem balance. So all of this is just kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall. There is no right or wrong answer. There's not like, oh, I have to find 2 bubbles here. That's not what this is really about. This is more just like seeing what you already know just from like your early standpoint, and then mapping it out and kind of helping you organize which lanes of inquiry or which lanes of attack or research might be the most either unified or useful or populated. Because ultimately, I find that there's way more research on how lionfish are affecting coral reef health than commercial fishermen. So this just may give me an idea of like what to look for. Because if I just search for lionfish and invasive species in the library database, I'm going to get hundreds of thousands of responses. So I kind of need to know what I'm already looking for. So this helps out for there. So I know this is just kind of like like I said, throwing spaghetti, a little convoluted. The big thing here is just sort of play with it. There's no right or wrong way to do it. But hopefully this will give you a little bit of like a visual aid as you continue to plan for this essay. So next up, I've got a few little tips that may help qualify your topics as well. So check in on that and we'll see where that takes us. So I hope that activity was useful to you. Like I said, it's one of my favorite things to kind of do to help get my ideas down on paper so I can kind of see the full lay of the land there. Now, here are also some other like just general tips for your essay, especially as we're here in the brainstorming phase. So first and foremost, I would encourage you to kind of like look behind your base soundings article, especially if your article is talking about like a solution to a problem or something that people are currently doing. So for instance, if they're celebrating Gopher Tortoise Day, or if they're writing a children's book, things like that, your problem isn't going to be Gopher Tortoise Day. It's not going to be the children's book. The problem is going to be what these two aspects are addressing. So sometimes you kind of have to reverse engineer that problem. So kind of keep an eye on that as you move through. And I tried to mention that in our topics as I gave that feedback. You can also do your best to keep your focus on the environmental aspect of the topic, as opposed to like the social situations that are happening. This is really easy to do with like microplastics and recycling, things like that, or like fertilizer. So again, keep your focus on the environment because that's where that research needs to sit for the natural sciences. We're less worried about people. I know people are probably causing most of the problems here, but we're less concerned with like the bigger social concepts here. So again, focus on the environment. Next, and this is going to be more applicable for next week, but follow your research. As you start to kind of look around, if you just see like the same kind of topic popping up constantly, like that's probably pretty important. So you might want to zoom into it. That's where that bubble mapping becomes so helpful because it kind of shows you all of your early ideas. And then as you do the research, it may help justify why one part was really important for you. Or you may find that, well, this other thing that I thought was really important, no one's really talking about. So that can give you something you can work on with your conclusion. And finally, remember your scope. We have to keep this local. Again, local does not mean just Florida, but just small in scope. You've got 600 words and 4 paragraphs. Climate change isn't going to be something you can tackle. So you need to kind of keep your attention small and localized so that you don't kind of balloon out too big. In the same way, if your whole argument is about endangered species, that's probably too big of a topic. You want to kind of zoom in some on something like endangered species within Florida, maybe, or pick a specific species. Same is true for invasive species. And even something like microplastics, which can be like a really big topic. You want to try and keep your attention here on like how it's affecting Florida or whatever your kind of local target is, because that's going to help you most when you start doing your research next week. Okay, so those are a couple of little tips for you. I hope they're useful. If you have some questions about your topic, you are welcome to email me. That way we can kind of work through any hiccups early on, and then we can prepare for the big research tasks ahead starting next week. So best of luck as you start working on your topics, and I'm here if you need any help. All right, we'll see how we do.